Hello, Austintown. This is Ken Carano, and doing a strange thing. I'm sitting here doing a podcast that at my age I had to learn what it was before I started. And this is now going to be the new Who's News, where we talk about different organizations, different businesses, different individuals, any kind of issue that is important to the people of Austintown. And I started today with somebody that I started knowing when he was a student in high school, and now he's finally retired, which makes me somewhat old. Of course, I think I started teaching when I was 5. That's what it was. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to hear the great attorney, Michael Dockry, who I worked with as a trustee in the township. He was so many different things involved, as well as his own business. So we're going to discuss things with Michael, and we're going to talk about the township and how things have changed from the time he was there, the time I was there, and so on. Michael, welcome to Who's News.
Thank you. This is my first podcast, too.
Yeah, it's really strange. I love this stuff. I mean, we could sit there. But now both of us went and changed. We got ready and everything else. Then we come here, we find out we're not going to be on the screen. We're just going to be talking. But this is fun. This is the great thing. Okay, let's talk about who is Michael Dockry. Now, your family was here. Did your family move into Austintown with your father and mother?
My mother grew up on a farm at the corner of Mahoning Avenue and Vile Road, which is now Greenwood Chevrolet. Mm-hmm. They owned from Mahoning Avenue all the way back to where Vile, you go around the 90-degree bend. It's still wooded area. So that would have been area that my grandfather and my uncles hunted, for years.
My goodness. What was the maiden name?
Herschel. I can remember, I don't know, if I was born in 56, 61, 62 time frame when they sold the house, and then they allowed the Austintown Fire Department to practice on it. So I remember walking through the woods. Of course, we grew up on Northwest Boulevard. So you'd walk through the woods, and there you were, watching the house, a controlled burn that the fire department did. I can remember that vividly.
I look back at because I didn't come to Austintown until 1969. And the thing is, I am originally from Camel, and Camel's a small town. But we used to talk about Austintown as the farm community, and that sort of thing.
Sure, fish farmers.
Yes, it was. It was a fish farmers. But the thing is now, your father was a physician.
That's how my mother and father met. She was in the nursing program at St. Elizabeth's. He was a general surgeon resident, and so that's how they met, and the rest is history.
Well, this is great because it is a history of Austintown with someone coming in there. And by the way, let me say this about your father. He was one heck of a physician. But you know what I loved about him? He didn't play games. He just told you what was to do and what not to do, period. That was crazy.
I've always heard two things about him, that type of thing, and then also that he had very good bedside manner.
Yeah. He was a good guy, really good guy. I don't know where you came from, but he was a good guy. How about your family? How many members of your family are there?
Okay, I was married in 1982, June 18th, 1982, to Marie, which she was from the north side of Youngstown. We met through my cousin initially. And then we had 3 daughters, Michelle, Caitlin, and Andrea.
Lovely daughters.
Thank you.
Thank God they take after their mother.
That's correct.
But your family itself, your brothers and...
I have 4 brothers, and I had 4 sisters, so there was 9 kids of us originally. So there was 11 of us in the house.
How do you rank?
I'm the 4th.
You're the 4th, because all you guys played football here at Fitch. And your sisters were always active too. That's really great. And the 3 daughters. That is something else. But here's a guy, he became an attorney, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But while you were here, you were a football player. And what fascinates me, because, you always been tall, but I always thought you were so slim, and here you were a tight end. and they're very successful. Your team was a very successful team.
I was, like 175 pounds, 175 pounds my senior year.
Jesus.
I was full, 6'2.5", fully grown as far as how tall I was, of course, back then.
But I don't know how you all didn't become quarterbacks like the tradition in your family. Okay, but you graduated from high school here at Austintown Fitch. What year?
1974.
1974. Oh my goodness! I started here in 1969. But see, I had classes that were set for to get people to be able to graduate. So, I mean, the smarter guys weren't in my class.
I just thought of this. This would be, right, this is 23, so this would be the 50th anniversary of my senior football season.
My goodness.
1973, it would have been the football season, yeah.
50 years. Jeez.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I keep telling people I'm not the right age. The guy who signed my birth certificate cheated me out of 25 years. He put the wrong date down, that sort of thing. But how fast time has gone. Now, after you left Fitch, where did you go to school?
I graduated from Youngstown State. Then I graduated from Akron Law School in 1982. I practiced general practice of law through 95, and then in 1996. I started full-time as township administrator when you started your first term as trustee.
Yeah, we were going to talk about that because prior to that, when you were first elected, as a township clerk.
Right. In November of 91, I was elected as township clerk, which is now called the fiscal officer. And, Ohio made that change, I don't know, 20 years ago or whatever. Just because they didn't think the title was a proper description of the job. And a lot of times townships were running into problems when the which is now the fiscal officer, would sign things, certify things, and it come across as a township clerk. And it's like, well, what does the township clerk know about finances?
Yes.
We need your treasurer to certify something. And they said, well, this is the person who is responsible for that. So they made that change.
It's really something because initially the clerks were dictated to by the trustees. But then as they progressed to taking care of the finances of all of the things that are going on in a township, they were given more power and more power to the point where it became a very touchy law thing.
I remember initially going to township seminars. They used to have both a summer and a winter meeting in Columbus. And of course, I would go to seminars at those times, at those annual meetings, having to do with the clerk. And now you have to understand, Ohio is 1,300 plus townships. 1,300 of them are rural townships. These people by the clerks at that time, they had their records in their home. That's how.
Oh yeah.
But you could tell by the questions they asked, they thought they were the secretaries for the Board of Trustees. And I would just sit there and think, these people don't understand what their position is because, the township clerk does two main things. One, keeps the record of the trustees' meetings, and they're the one responsible for what exactly goes into those minutes. And number two, they're the ones that basically tell the trustees you have this much money to spend.
It's just unbelievable. I'll tell you what. The situation, though, in Austintown, and we know the system because you were here when this happened. Austintown was a relatively small town. All townships are the same. They're all 5 miles by 5 miles.
For the most part,
that's correct. A lot of the miles is, for example, Austintown loses a lot of it because of the lakes that are in.
I think a half a square mile, I think.
Something like that. But the fact is that we were, after Lordstown came in and so on, this township just blew up, absolutely blew up. Houses were being made all over the place. People were moving in here and so on. because we were no longer that 10,000 people. All of a sudden, it blew up to about 35,000. And we went, I have a notice here that in 2010, the census, we were the 19th largest township in the state out of all those townships. And yet, there were so many more. When we went there were so many more small townships. People thought townships were nothing. Yet we're the oldest. Townships are the oldest form of government in the state of Ohio.
That's correct.
But it's really something that how fast it blew up. But you grew up in that age period where it started getting bigger and bigger. How many were in your class at high school?
636.
Unbelievable.
Can I remember when I was about 10 years old? So that would put it about 1966, summertime in 1966, fall in 1966. My parents taking us out, some of us at least, I don't remember who, but I went out to Lordstown, and I remember they had the open houses. Mm-hmm. So I remember that, and it was around, I think I was about 10 years old.
I started teaching here in 69 when it was getting huge. And this was the second year here at this high school. This high school was built. The funny part about it is by the next year, we didn't even have a classroom. All the English teachers would stay in one room together, and then we would go like colleges to go to this classroom and that classroom because there was so many students. You had no place to keep a classroom like that. It was just unbelievable how fast and how big we got. And you know what? We still are, and there's no question about it. I think there's more students in Boardman than there are in Austintown now for a little bit, but we're still a very large township.
I think the 1978 class, I had a brother graduate in 78, was the biggest class. And from there, then they started to go down. And like I said, we had, 636, and I think they were easily over 700 and maybe close to 800 that year.
That was funny, because my son, I believe it was 82 or 83, and when he graduated, and it was lowering by that time, and it was about 550. Mm-hmm. I mean, to think that many students in each of those classes was unbelievable. Now, we're back up to about 350, somewhere around there, whereas most of the other schools have the smaller schools, 120, 180, maybe 200, and so on. But you know what? You grew up in this area. Now, why did you decide to be a lawyer?
Again, my memory isn't that good.
Isn't it something you can't remember why you chose that particular thing? But now let's talk about the township, because you were there. Okay, so when you first ran. Now there was the history of, and I loved studying the history of Austintown and so on, and there were. It was a set group of people that would take turns becoming trustees and clerks. But there was one clerk. The clerks, half the people in the township didn't even know who the clerk was and that sort of thing. And here he was the person that was there. Then all of a sudden, here comes you, here comes Dave Ditzler, here comes Bo Pritchard, here comes the younger organization comes into this area. So when did they change it? Were you still a clerk when they changed it into a fiscal officer?
I was clerk. So I started again at the township as administrator in 96. Ken, now that I think about it, I think the change took place right around 96, 97, right when I was always the clerk. I was never the fiscal officer, but I think they made the change pretty close to then when I started as township administrator.
Yeah, because when my first time of becoming a trustee, there were clerks, and the thing is that was you guys that were there. You already were there, and all of a sudden all these things changed and so on. I have to sing his Mike Dockry's praises. The man is very laid back. He'll tell you what he believes, and he's very knowledgeable about everything. But he doesn't get pushy, especially to people who are theoretically the ones who are responsible, because fiscal officers had the right to tell the trustees, no, you can't do that because you don't have this particular money, but you always told us how much we have, what we're going to have to do, and that sort of thing, especially when we had to negotiate raises and so on, and that sort of thing.
You know, the Ohio Revised Code says that one of the jobs, one of the duties of a township administrator is to put the budget together. So again, going back to the fiscal officer is the one that tells the trustees and, of course, tells the township administrator, let's say for the police department, you got X amount of dollars this year based on the cash on hand at the beginning of the year and what revenue I think we're going to get this year. This is how much you have to spend. So they might say $3 million. Well, so then it's up to the township administrator, and always worked with the fiscal officer,
sure,
just to break that $3 million down into the different categories, the personnel expenses and then equipment expenses and that type of thing.
Well, let's move on to the next position and that sort of thing. When I first came here, that's when all of a sudden the state started with administrators. Townships never had administrators before. It was strictly the trustees and the clerk and that sort of thing.
I'm told by people out in Boardman that whenever the administrator position started, and Ken, I think it went back to maybe 89, 90, around there, that the law was passed, 30 days or whatever, the law becomes effective, supposedly at noon someday, and Boardman hired their first administrator like at 12:15 that day.
I don't remember that at all.
That's what the people in Boardman say.
Because my first year is when we started having an administrator, and it was I don't remember administrators being anywhere else except right after or right with us in appointing to it. But I mean, then again, I don't know Boardman history.
Yeah. Well, see, I remember going out and talking to, and I can't remember his name, the administrator at Boardman at the time. Just to get an idea about
what's going on
about the job.
Now you were the first administrator?
Yes.
And that was beautiful. Now, what year was that?
Again, January 1st, 1996, officially.
And just now you're leaving, and we have a new administrator, and he seems to be a very nice individual.
Yep. Mark D'Appolito, he'll do a good job.
And he's very similar to your personality, laid back and that sort of thing. But Mike knew how to be very strong over things while he was still smiling at you. Okay, so you come in there as administrators, and the administrator had to take over everything. I mean, you talk about someone, the day in and day out individual.
The day-to-day operations.
That had to do everything that involved with you. And the situation is the knowledge that an administrator has to have, and I give you the full credit for it. You better know all about computers and this and that. You better know about each of the departments. I mean, I could just see you studying that stuff day in and day out because it was so much easier when it came to negotiations because we knew what we had to do, and that sort of thing, and it was good.
Well, it was easier for me stepping into that job because, again, I had been clerk for almost 4 years. So I was familiar with the people, familiar with the budget, that type of thing, as opposed to someone who had just came in cold and not had, that experience that I had.
Let's talk about some of the things that were a problem in Austintown, because I can remember the first giant-sized one that I saw, and that had to do with our water around here. It was flooding area. As a matter of fact, I lived in some of that area and so on. And something like Boardman is going through now with all this thing, we went through that particular time, especially the first year. But before I got there, you guys already started on doing putting ditches around in different areas to be able to absorb the water and to solve that particular problem.
You talk about your memory and what you remember. Here's one thing that I do remember, and I guess it's the type of thing you don't forget. July 31st, 1992. Now, I was out of town on vacation. I come back and find out about the big rainstorm. and people described it the same way, that you could stick your hand out in front of you. If you stood out in the rain, you couldn't see your hand. So that was major flooding. That started our process. And then, a matter of fact, then June, I don't remember the exact date, but it was June the next year of '93, we had another large storm. And at the time, I lived on Sheffield, which backs into the backyards of Kirk Road. And there's a ditch that runs behind my house. And Ken, I couldn't believe it. It was, I described it as 75-yard wide raging river. I just couldn't believe it. And so, yeah, that really started our process of what you say Boardman's doing now, of starting to deal with all the stormwater issues. And when Boardman would talk, when I would talk to Boardman about what they're going through, I would tell them, listen, guys, in a way, we were lucky because we were able to find land that we owned or someone else owned that we were able to trade off.
Yes.
Or in the case of the North Raccoon Detention, the diocese owned next to their cemetery, that they were willing, to give us for detention purposes. And, we have those two big detentions over there behind the water tower, north of the water tower.
Sure. And by Leonard Kirk School.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Between Leonard Kirk and the water tower, there's two big detentions.
Big detentions.
And
that's where I used to live.
Right, I know. And so, the engineers were able to come up and say, well, if you can put detentions here, if you can get this land, and the county owned one part of those lands over there, a private developer owned another, and we were able, between us and the county, trade land with this private developer and get the land for both of those two detentions, which made a big saved us the years after that.
It's really funny because detention ponds are commonplace. They weren't commonplace.
They weren't. You're right.
They were not. We were one of the first townships to be able to do those particular things, and it worked so well. It really did. I know in my case, I was constantly getting, flooded in my garage and so on, and this immediately stopped it. And it was rather quick too. That's the thing that just fascinated me. It was quick. They dug a big hole, put a fence around it, had the pipe go right into it, and then you could watch it get sky high and then just slowly fizzle out.
Go down, exactly.
So that was one of the big problems of our town. The other situation with us was we have Austintown, for some reason, was given a residential tag. Business, yet here we were off of Route 11, Route 80 and everything else, and we weren't the business thing. Boardman got most of the business thing. We did not. And we had, a lot of houses were built here, especially when that big movement from Lordstown and so on. And we had problems at trying to set things up. And Mahoning Avenue was tough. And our biggest problem was that we have state, county, and township roads in this town, and we'd get blamed for anything that was wrong at that time. But the thing is that we had a good combination, especially with the county, that we could talk to them and deal with their particular roads and so on. But it was really funny because Mahoning Avenue was Mahoning Avenue. It was always the big business area. But some of the other areas grew up then.
I can remember probably back when I became township clerk, and we'd have like the Austintown Growth Committee or whatever it was called back then, and I would go to those meetings, and I remember a developer talking about no big box, the Walmarts, the Targets, those type of things. Right. Myers now is going to locate into Austintown because you've got Niles Warren and you got Boardman. Yeah, and so they're not going to come to Austintown. They're going to go to those two places. And when Walmart came in the early 90s, that kind of and went, and they also said they're not going to go west of 46. Well, Walmart came in and did both things. They went west of 46, and they were a big box.
You brought up a great point over here. In those days, they called it an industrial circles. And if they had the circles, Austintown was in between two circles,
Correct.
between Warren and between the Youngstown area.
Correct.
So nothing was ever there. But when Walmart started making their big time, and I remember the history when I was a state rep, and I even got to talk to the guy who was in charge of it. One man pushed Walmart to say, I'm telling you that we should have it here. And I mean, he was a lowly vice chair someplace. And they came here and built the Walmarts here. For some reason, he got it passed. That Walmart's was the most used Walmart in the state of Ohio for almost 2 years. That guy went from a lowly vice chairman to the president in Ohio because of the success in Austintown. And that did show everything up, but some of the local stores couldn't make it against them and so on. We had Kmart's over here. We had a bunch of the other stores, but people moved in here.
Yeah, I can remember hearing those same types of statistics that the Walmart store was way at the top of the revenue coming into them versus other stores in the state.
But now all these different things, because we have the population, and that's right in the middle of the population, we have other stores that are coming, and it looks good. So that was a good thing. Let's talk about the Racino.
Okay.
Out of the clear blue sky. It's really funny how people talk about these particular things, and they really don't know some of the situations. Keep in mind that a lot of those particular things are done through Columbus. It's through the legislation, and they do it for a specific reason and so on. Sometimes it's cute, sometimes it's kind of strange, sometimes you think it's almost illegal, but we get these particular things happening to us. But I'll tell you what, I'll never forget Dave Ditzler's eyeballs were sky high when he was trustee. Everybody wanted to be here. But the biggest thing that we got to talk to the people who were in charge of putting these things, which are still now the biggest organization of gambling in the nation. And they came over here, and one of the big reasons why was we had so much illegal gambling around here. It was unbelievable. But the biggest thing as a state rep, when I found out, the big reason we have this thing here with the racetrack, because they couldn't we couldn't have a casino in there with just, slot machines and all these other things. You had to be attached because the people in charge of horse racing and both with the different types of racing, they needed a place to go, and then this was easy to put this other thing here. And Austintown, theoretically, was supposed to be something like, it was the initial horse racing here was going to be, the one with the
Thoroughbreds.
No,
I'm sorry. It is thoroughbreds now.
It's
What's
the name? I says, you can see our age. We forgot. They would have
I'm thinking sulkies. What do they call them?
Yeah,
Trotters.
Trotters. Yeah, right. I had a family member who had those horses, and Northfield was the big place there. But they were supposed to come over here, and then they said, "Whoa, no, Northfield." You keep in mind the guy who owns Northfield now owns about 3 of the casinos and racinos in the state of Ohio, and he had the pressure. But the biggest reason why we have thoroughbreds here is they were looking for a place in the wintertime to store horses.
That's what I understand.
That's what it was. And what happened was they came over here, and it was really funny because we kept saying, how in the world are they going to have horse racing? And they horse race here during the wintertime. But they knew how to do it. And it worked.
This is probably something we all learned at the time, is that the horses enjoy running in the winter.
Wintertime.
It's the summertime where they got to be cooled off,
yes.
and you got a problem with trying to keep them cooled off. But I remember the guys from the chamber telling us, they were going all over the place in the county looking for sites, and of course they were out on I think 7 in Beaver Township, and that was kind of an area they were looking at. And so they're with the Penn National people one day, and they're looking, and Penn National still isn't satisfied with anything they've seen, and they're sitting down at Starbucks or someplace on 46 near the freeway there. And they're talking about this, and they're talking about, well, we've shown you everything, we think we can show you. And one of the guys says, oh, well, wait a minute. There's some land around here that was going to be a business development of some type, and it never went through. Whatever happened to that property? And so I don't know if they did it right then and there and went and looked at the property, or they just went and looked at maps, whatever. So that's how that was brought up. And so they went and looked at this property there where they're at now. And, excuse me. And I guess it didn't take them 10 minutes to say, this is where we want to go.
Well, we're talking about the history of this area. That particular road where they are now, we were going to put a road. You went from right off the freeway and straight down to the next road, and then some companies were going to come in there and put some businesses there.
Right.
And remember, we had to have meetings, and people were upset with that because the people living there didn't want people coming in there interfering with their fun.
Well, Lanterman Road off of North Raccoon was going to be extended and have a bridge. And
yes.
Right, exactly. Those people were upset. They didn't want their quiet road to now become a major thoroughfare.
But I'll tell you, they turned around, and you are correct. They purchased that place so fast, it was unbelievable. I mean, all I can remember was, oh my God, hearing the word that they're doing this stuff. And I was down in Columbus at that time, and the thing is, you never heard about things until they were done, before anything happened. But there they were, this big coming in now. They decided they're gonna have thoroughbred racing in the wintertime, but they're gonna have Racino type of gambling. And it's funny because in the old days, the casinos had slot machines and so on that were simply by themselves and so on, and they had other table gambling. Racinos, believe it or not, all of their slot machines are wired together, and that's why you don't have any poker games or anything else. They're not allowed to have them. Racinos aren't allowed to use any kind of poker games that belong in casinos, but they're wired. They are wired. It's a different type of situation. It's hilarious because they don't have to go around and a guy doesn't have to change each of the slot machines. All they have to do is sit at the computer, and they'll change the percentage that pays off and that sort of thing. So it was really something different. And to be able to do that, and they did it quickly.
They did.
Remember, the biggest problem they had was water. They wanted to make deals with, because at that time it was either going to be from Youngstown or it was going to be from the Niles area and that sort of thing. And they were looking to really make a lot of money on them. And they said, no, we're not going to do it. And what did they do? They put up their own water tower.
They dug wells, I believe, and they put up their own tower for pressure. Yeah.
Now they do pay Youngstown for some of their water, and that's only for emergencies, that sort of thing, because those people were so well developed and they knew what they were doing. But that was really funny. But then we had that big controversy, and you and I we were probably the last ones dealing with this, because when they got the decision made in Columbus, Ron Gerberry was our state rep at that particular time.
That's correct.
And he worked with there were 6 other areas. Six total areas that had racinos, and they had, each of them were trying to get some money for their particular town, because there was a fear of, like Austintown was big and right off the freeway, but the rest of these towns, some of them very small and so on. They were looking for some money. So they passed this thing that they were supposed to get $2 million at the beginning of when they started, and then $500,000 a year. And that's what they were supposed to, each of the townships were supposed to get that. And it was all excited. I remember Ron being very excited, although he did know at the time that you had to watch yourself because the party system was a little strange. So lo and behold, we started doing this, but all of a sudden, we did get our initial money, but they said no. The governor's office actually is the one that's turned around and said, no, that's, if the Racino wants to pay him $500,000, that's there, but that first money is coming to the state, and the state's going to have it. And
we received our $1 million payments for the first 2 years, and then, we were told, okay, you're supposed to get $500,000 a year. Well, it never came.
Never came.
So we started looking at the language, and basically the language of the revised code basically didn't really set that out, but said that, the community shall get together with the governor's office and work out a deal, basically, a very general language type of that. So we started, you led it, trying to get the governor to talk to us.
First, Jim Davis, I'll never forget Jim. Jim and who went with him?
Darren, I know.
Darren did. Yeah,
down to
they would go to each of the meetings of the horse racing group, and they were trying to talk to him because they wanted to know what we're going to get and so on. And they wouldn't even let him talk to him. But they went to every one of their meetings.
Well, that had to do with for them initially to get license in Austintown, and there was some pushback from the Cleveland area because, of course, they have not only Northville, but you have a casino up there.
Yeah, they have everything.
So there was a few meetings that they drove down to Columbus.
So, but at the end, the governor simply said, that was Governor Kasich, and to his credit, apparently the terminology of that bill gave him the right to stop us, and then he simply said, no, we're going to take the money.
Well, the state said, listen, that $500,000 is supposed to come from the company who's running the Racino in your area, and they said, no, that was never the deal we made with them. It was going to come from the state of Ohio.
Right. And then I was lucky enough because I was a state rep, and with at that time Senator Schiavone, we got all of the 6 townships together, the 6 areas, because there was Dayton and a few other places.
And there was a small city up in Cleveland, I forget who they were.
We organized and made enough noise that the governor had to listen to us. And then you and I had to go down and negotiate with them, with the governor's people and the same guy who was in charge of the horse racing and so on was in those meetings. And the meetings were hilarious, just hilarious. It was like we're sitting here giving them now, this is this, this is this, and they're going, oh, we don't care. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, no, we don't care.
Well, we kept saying, listen, we don't care where the money comes from, but one of you two
has to pay us.
Has to pay us based on that language in the statute.
And then the governor's office said, well, it's the Racino that has to pay you. And the Racino says, wait a minute, we have a contract here. We don't have to pay 2 people for anything.
Well, not only that, they would say, hey, folks, we paid $25 million for our Racino license. That was all we were ever obligated to pay, or whatever they ended up paying.
Well, just to set the record straight, and we went in one day and we started about, okay, let's play politics. Right now, the 6 people are all waiting for us. The 6 areas, including Austintown, are all ready for this money and everything else. And we want some money because we expected it, we needed it for different things. And finally, they turned around and said, "Okay, if you guys quit talking, we'll give you $1 million
right,
or
exactly.
something like this."
They sent us $500,000 the next 2 years.
But it was just unbelievable how that worked. But the Racino was nice. They were very successful in what they were doing and so on. What shocked everybody was when the Racino came here, they didn't expect making any money. It was going to cost them money for the horse racing, and they were going to make the money inside with the machines. Lo and behold, they found out, oh my God, the people in the Youngstown, Mahoning County, and other areas, because we're so close between Pennsylvania and everything else, people actually came here to watch the races.
Exactly.
And they were making money for the races too. They were just ecstatic.
They were really shocked. Like on the Saturday, of course, there was no light, so it was always 12:30 to 4:30 type of racing, and they were shocked, especially on Saturday afternoons. How the place was packed with just the people betting on the horses.
See, now you and I would fit real in to the ones that came there during the day, because they were all the older individuals, and you're a mere child compared to me. But I mean, that's a different story. But the Racino worked out well. The one thing that the Racino did for us more than anything else in Austintown is because the county commissioner was Dave Ditzler. For some reason, our administrators now, and I think they realized they probably could have pushed a little bit more to do something with the roads and do something with the sewers and stuff like that around here. And because of them paying all the particular money, the county said, well, and you could only do it for what? How many miles? Like a mile and a half away from the area that was paying for it?
Yeah, they did what we call a tax increment financing. The county did.
Yes.
And I think it's for a 10-year period, and $8 million sticks in my mind as far as that's the total money, either a year or over the 10 years that's going to be raised. I forget. But anyways, the Racino didn't need all the money to do their infrastructure, and that's the only thing that the Racino could use it for was their infrastructure.
That's right.
So the money left over, then yes, the county was able to use on infrastructure in the county. So they're using it right now and have been using it for county roads, basically in Austintown.
Yeah, it worked out so well for us.
Yes.
But I mean, the thing is, it was a success for us. And the best thing in the world, though, that we were shocked at, because we were afraid, like other places were afraid with their Racinos, that there was going to be all kind of problems. Our fire department would have to be constantly, our police would be doing it. And that never happened. It really didn't.
It didn't. Yeah, we were pleasantly surprised about that. The Racino, from what I understand from our police department, does a good job of whatever. Somebody has had too much to drink or is mad about losing money, does a good job of just telling people you got to leave. And so it's been a very rare case when they've had to call us to say, this person we've asked to leave and they're not leaving.
I think while I was here, the only thing I remember is there was a fight that turned on. The guys fought. Our police didn't go in there. Their people stopped it. But one of the guys had to be arrested and everything else. So they called just to pick him up and to put him in jail. So, I mean, it's a good deal. I mean, they really were a fun place. But, it's really something how we went through that, because we were anticipating more money that the people in the township were going to have to pay because of the cost factor. Now let's talk. We're not going to be able to do too much more here, but the thing is, if you don't mind, I think you come back again, because there's so many things that are going on in Austintown that people have to see how the changes are and so on. But look at as a township being as big, theoretically, we had two responsibilities. As far as I knew, it was our roads and our cemeteries. Those were the two things that townships are responsible for.
Right. And then they put in their fire inspection, I believe, not suppression, just fire inspection.
Isn't that something?
Okay, right.
Yeah.
I can go back to, again, I started in 1996 as administrator. So I had, like I said, almost 4 years as clerk or fiscal officer. And, basically, we were the first at the township then that was starting to do computerization. And the auditor was doing that. They were pushing the townships. They came up with the software. And so that was the first computerization of the township, had to do with the finances before I became, administrator. Because I remember when I started then as administrator coming in, and, there were, very few computers. Of course, the police had some related to, let's say, dispatch and their record keeping.
Yes.
But I mean, I still remember there was the main secretary had a typewriter.
Well, it just fascinates me, because that's exactly what happened when I was there the first time. It was, you had one computer, you had the other, everybody else didn't have computers, and that's really But the last time I was a trustee, and as I walked out, you walk in your office, and you had computers all, you had 4 different things going on all in front of you. And I thought the best one was, how did you always get the sky view of our roads and so on?
Oh, that's from the auditors.
That's the
county
auditors'
website. Yeah.
But I mean, all the things that you could do by sitting there. I'd ask you a question in 30 seconds. You could tell me the answer because of the computer.
And that would be a big change. Just what you have at your fingertips. Townships, like any other business anymore, based on the internet, is out there.
I really wonder because we had a good organization and it's still going very nicely, and that's the Trustees Association. And you can get to talk to people from other townships because we have a lot of small townships around this area who don't have the facilities that we have, yet they have better facilities than they used to have. There's no question about it. But what happened? We're gonna end up one thing today because you were so involved in this. The 2 things that we got involved in ABC, which was the water thing, and really people were trying to push us into something. We were just part of the deal. But the other thing was the way we had communications, and we split the communications. That what is it? It's us, Boardman, and the county that take care of things?
Yeah, that had to do with the dispatching.
Yes.
9/11 dispatching, and Boardman's a dispatch center. We're a dispatch center. The city of Youngstown is. City of Canfield is. And there might be there's still some outlying entities doing some of their dispatching, but what it was is the county was also doing some dispatching for the sheriff's department. They gave that up. And now we are with the county and Boardman into what you call a COG for emergency dispatching for not just Austintown and Boardman and the sheriff's department, but also for some of the smaller entities in the area.
So most of the other townships and so on are associated with either us or Boardman or somebody.
For the most part.
For the most part.
Canfield may have some of them. I think even at one time, one of the, maybe like a Sebring or something, may have had someone from another county, Stark County, even dispatching for them. But the whole idea is, right, to get fewer air centers for dispatching, consolidate, save money, make it more efficient. And then the ABC, that's another COG, Council of Governments, they call it. And we originally, Austintown, wanted to do it because, as you said at the beginning of the show, we were arguing with Youngstown over the cost of water, and so we were looking at other areas to get water from, but townships on their own cannot sign a contract, let's say with the Niles or another water supplier, ACO, whatever, for water, but a COG of 3 townships could do
it, yes.
So yes, we formed the COG with Canfield, Boardman, and Austintown, and actually that was the only reason all 3 of us originally were looking into this. But then with our attorneys that were putting this together for us, and you got to make application with a common pleas court, and they said, well, Austintown, you don't qualify for that being the basis of forming the COG because almost everybody in the township has a water source, a drinking water source, if you will. So, but they said, do you guys have stormwater issues? And we said, do we have stormwater issues? Of course we do. So that qualified us then to become part of this COG. And so the COG deals with stormwater, and I think Canfield has signed a contract. The Canfield Township has signed a contract, maybe with the city of Canfield for water for a certain part of the township.
The big issue too about that is, and we didn't do a lot of it because every time you raise taxes in a township, it becomes very treacherous. I'll never forget though the first time I found out that the Youngstown water comes from our lake through us.
Yeah.
And I said that one day when Youngstown raised our water rates to $1.47 or something like that, I says, I want to go find out where that thing is, drill a hole and put a stop to the water over there. But it's so funny because things worked out for us. But I believe, except for those houses that have individual waters for themselves, we have everything comes from the Youngstown.
It does. It
It comes from Youngstown. We don't have the other
like
areas.
Boardman's like half
one.
City of Youngstown, half
Right.
Aqua.
Right. But the big thing with them is that they have the big water problems now, although we do get them periodically, and it's not happening all the time, but things will happen. It's just like putting in the old days, they thought, they steel was the only way to put in pipes, and now we find out that they disappeared. The next thing you know, we're having problems now from 40, 50 years ago, 60 years ago.
The engineers tell me it's the acid rain, the salt we put down in the wintertime. That gets into the storm system, and those metal pipes, it just eats away at those metal pipes, and because constantly we found pipes, the bottoms are gone.
Here we are after so many years of working in the township, and a lot of times organizations or individuals like to blame us. Oh, it's their fault. They didn't do this and that. Hey, when we were there, steel was the big thing. That then we got plastic because it was a little cheaper. But the thing is, we didn't realize that it was all going to rot. That sort of thing in those days.
Exactly.
But I love when people turn around and blame something that happened 50 years ago. But being perfect the way we are, it's a difficult time. But Mike, what do you? If you don't mind, I'd like to continue some of these things a little bit later and so on. But what are you going to do now, huh? Are you still at all able to? Could someone call you up to be their lawyer?
I'm trying to finish up that part of it. Probably reduce it just maybe to family type of issues. I don't know if what exactly I'm going to do. I'm still kind of I've been busy with the family. Took a vacation. Two daughters moved, so I was busy with them, helping them move, that type of thing. And so I haven't really got into this full retirement type of thing, yet. And
well, it's wait till you do. I finally said that's it. I'm going to stop becoming, all the different organizations I belong to, companies that I had, and so on. I got so bored I couldn't believe it. So now I'm they call it substitute teaching. It's substitute attendance taking is what it is. But you know what? We can talk about that too, because you were involved in a lot of organizations. The Kiwanis were giant size with you and so on. And look at how they're all gone. I mean, they are absolutely, there's only a few left and so on, and we could talk about those particular things. But I'm going to say this. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure. Let me tell you something. I worked with this man from the time I became a trustee and a politician. Austintown has survived and has grown so beautifully. And I have to give a lot of the credit because he knew how to control a lot of the trustees when they had to make decisions and so on, because he was so knowledgeable as Mike. We have to thank Mike Dockry for the years that he came here as administrator and how he ran the township, and people didn't even know it. He did it so cautiously. But the other thing is, I used to love listening to you on the phone. You'd get these calls. You get 20 a day, some of them bitching about something, or very few said, oh, nice job to these guys. But to sit there and listen to you, have people screaming at you while you sit there, and you just sit there and listen to them, and then you finally turn around to them and very cautiously tell them why they are wrong and what they're talking about. And they were pleased.
That was one of the one of the more frustrating parts of the job is, people would think we have this all-encompassing authority, power to do things,
yes.
and to tell people, we're a township. We got the same power that rural townships have. And that's not something that we can take care of. You got to call the county. You got to call your state legislatures, whatever. So that was very frustrating. People say, well, we pay our taxes. And,
Most of the people who moved into Austintown were like me. They came from cities. No matter how small those cities were, the cities created their own laws and so on. Townships did not. We had specific laws. We tried to go into that home rule where we could make some decisions ourselves, and it was constantly, once again, people would come up with ideas that did not exist in home rule. Like they're going to tell us we can't buy guns, or we did this and that. All these different issues.
And the big thing was, we were going to be able to enact an income tax.
Income tax.
And that law then and now does not give you the authority to enact an income tax, but that was the type of things that were being said, and so.
I mean, here we are a township that's I love when they take the laws. I mean, pick out how many people are here and there, and we keep getting. I'll never forget the first time they gave us 32,000, and we said what? And we had them redo it. They came up with 35. We're probably closer to 40,000 than we are now. But now people are starting to move in and out. But we're not getting a lot of kids because a lot of the senior citizens are staying in Austintown and that sort of thing. But the thing is that this township, we had a fire department. Townships in long time ago didn't have fire departments, didn't have police departments. They would get the sheriff's department to come in and so on. But because of how many people we had here, we had all those things. And there's only a few, out of the thousands of 1,300 townships, there's probably only about, somewhere around 200 or 250 that are big enough to be able to deal with that.
I can remember, fiscal officers they don't start January 1st after the November election. They start April 1st. I think the state did that so they could become more acquainted with,
yes,
what they have to do, especially as far as the finances are concerned. Give the state time to send them to seminars and make sure they know what they have to do. So anyways, I didn't start until then, April 1st of 92. In May of 92, I remember them hiring 5 full-time firemen, okay? Because prior to that, now we're a township of, at that time, 35, 36,000
yes,
probably people, whatever. And I think at the time we had the chief, we had the assistant chief, we had a fire inspector.
We had volunteer fire department.
And maybe we had one more. So we had about 3 or 4 full-time people.
Right.
And so that's when we started, we realized we can't
live like that.
We can't live like this. We got to start getting full-time. And so, that's almost unbelievable that in 1992, a township like ourselves was just then was, let's say, doubling to almost 9 or 10 only full-time officers.
Yeah, unbelievable. I could remember, like our police, we started with about 25, then we went to 30, and now I think it's 40.
We've always been around 40.
40, and because it's just that there's so many people here, so many things that have to be done. It's just unbelievable. But Michael, thank you so very much. I talked to Mark, our new administrator, and he loved the idea that all of a sudden it wasn't attorney Mike Dockry, it was Professor Mike Dockry who was teaching him what had to be done with all the things, and he was so pleased with it. Does he get the ability to call you if he has a problem?
Oh, I told him, I says, Mark, don't be wasting time looking for something or you don't know how to approach a problem or something. Just give me a call. I can probably in 2 minutes point you to go look here or look at the problem this way and call this person. You know what I mean? That type of thing.
I think that's what you should do. I think you should go teach at the university or something for people who want to be administrators. But let's see if we can do it again, and we have other things. And any of you that's out there that have questions about different things that you want to talk about the township, its political end, its financial end, and any other issues, you can call the high school and leave a message in the TV studio, and they'll get it back to us. You could call me, Ken Carano. You could call Mike. He's got nothing else to do, so you could talk to him too. But the thing is, if you have questions that you would like to have answered about the townships, let us know. But Mike, thank you for being here today, and thank all of you who are listening in on this podcast. Podcast, is that what it's?
Podcast.
I have to learn a whole new vocabulary over here. But please let us know if there's things that you would like to talk about. I'd like to get in touch with a few of the people that still have organizations here, because this township used to have almost 20 different organizations. I think we have 5 now. I'm not even sure we have that many. But if you'd like to talk about it, or other individuals who have something that is going on, to just give us a call and we'll have you on the air. So thank you all for listening to Who's News in Austintown. Have a good day.